Welcome to Washington Hospital Today, the program dedicated to sharing timely information about the community hospital that's been taking care of Washington Township Healthcare District residents since it opened in 1958. Washington Hospital Today is provided for the sole purpose of informing residents about healthcare topics and issues that have been covered during community forums, free health and wellness classes, or as part of educational sessions held during the district's open board meetings. This program is one more way that Washington Hospital helps empower you, the residents of the district, by providing information needed to make informed decisions about your health.
Today's presenter is Kimberlee Alvari. Kimberlee Alvari received her undergraduate degree from Cal Poly in San Luis Obispo, graduating magna cum laude. Her postgraduate work was done at the University of California, San Francisco, where she was named the Bay Area's most outstanding dietetic student. She currently is pursuing 2 masters, one in food service administration and one in business. Kimberlee's early professional career as a registered dietitian includes positions at the University of California at San Francisco's Medical Center and as a consultant to Home Health Plus. Her years at Washington Hospital began as a clinical dietitian with a focus in critical care. The last 10 years have been spent in management of the clinical staff and most recently as the food service director. Kimberlee is a member of many professional organizations, including the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics, American Society of Parenteral and Enteral Nutrition, and the Bay Area's Hospital Leadership Team.
There's so much information that comes out all the time on diets, whether it's for diabetics or just people in general, in terms of what's healthy, what's not, what's true, what's a fact, what's a hoax. And particularly for diabetics, since there's 26 million Americans that have diabetes and another 7 million that are not even diagnosed, and then millions more that have what we call pre-diabetes, or they have blood sugars that are not quite normal. And those are particularly, that group of people, really by having appropriate diet and exercise can even decrease the risk of developing diabetes. So there's a large group of people that the marketplace knows that they have a key audience for, to try to introduce products and to offer some advice to. So some of that advice gets really kind of difficult to understand, to weed through what is fact, what is fiction, what is fad, what is pseudoscience, really not based on strong evidence, what's testimonial. A lot of times we hear things from movie stars or things that they've been doing, or different diets that kind of reach it to our level. And so this evening what I'd really like to do is to talk a little bit about that and give you some information about healthy and smart food choices for diabetics, and really talk about the myths and the fallacies and get to the bottom of some of that here tonight. Anyway, what are we going to do tonight? We're going to review why nutrition is so important for diabetics. Gee, we all eat several times a day, so it's a big part of what you do. It has a critical part of making sure your blood sugars are in control. So good nutrition is important for you. Look at some of the facts and the fallacies, like I said, and some of the myths, what's not true. And then we'll just talk about what's sound. What does a basic diabetic meal planning look like? How to be a nutritionist for yourself, particularly when you don't have an RD at your side. How do you make those choices on your own? So why is nutrition so important? Well, we said we eat several times a day. Everything you eat is going to, essentially at some point going to be part of the fuel your body uses. And so planning what you eat is really important. It helps control your blood sugars with proper planning. What you eat can also lower your lipid values, your cholesterol, your triglyceride, the healthy ones and the bad ones. So you want to make sure that what you eat supports healthy lipids or blood cholesterol. Help maintain a healthy way to promote weight loss. We know that healthy weight, or BMI that's healthy for you, helps decrease your risk of developing diabetes, also helps control blood sugar, so you want a healthy weight. Helps lower or eliminate the need for medication. Some people are able to get to a point where they're able to manage their diabetes just with diet and exercise alone. So with a proper lifestyle, that may be you as well. Help maintain the pleasure of eating by only limiting food choices when indicated by scientific evidence. I don't know how many people I talk to, no matter whether they're diabetics or whatever that you talk to, and they're eliminating things in their diet because they've heard it was bad for them, but it's something that they really like. And there really isn't any good research to say that they can't have it in their diet. So you don't want to do that either. So you want to really have some good information. And then just prevent the complications that come from having blood sugars that are not controlled. Nerve problems, kidney and vision problems, and other complications such as heart disease and circulatory problems. So the diet is critical. Factor fallacy. Body weight's a reliable indicator of a healthful diet. So most of us we look at someone and they look healthy. They look like they're not overweight. We ask them what they're doing or how did you do that, or they've lost weight. That's the first thing we see. You run into someone you know and you talk to them about how they lost their weight, and they'll start to tell you they cut this out, they cut that out. But the real fact is that no two people have the same composition or the same type of measure of their body weight as the next person. And so your overall health is really a combination of things. So someone may look healthy, but they may not actually be eating a diet that's healthy. They may have not enough intake of calcium. They may have other things going on. So while weight is something that we focus on, it's not an indication of that the person's eating a healthy diet. Next factor fallacy. Eating just before you go to bedtime. That's a pretty common one, but really what the research shows that it's really not true. It's the total of what you eat, not when you eat it, that makes a difference. Calories are calories, and at the end of the day, the total of what you have is what contributes to excess weight. Certainly there's some new research, though, and some that we're familiar with, that says that those that eat breakfast and have their meals spaced out throughout the day typically consume less calories by the end of the day, because you don't go through peaks and valleys of being excessively hungry and then eating too much, and or having large amounts of food like before bedtime that maybe even affect your blood sugar control and stuff like that. So definitely spacing out your meals and doing that is a value, but just eating before bedtime is not going to make you fat. Next facts. Eating carbohydrates causes weight gain. It's very popular, very much a fad. And again, calories cause weight gain. It's not the carbohydrates, it's total calories. Excess carbohydrates are not more fattening than any calories from any other source that you consume. Obviously, fat calories are more concentrated sources of calories, and so it doesn't take much to eat things that have a high fat content and get extra calories. But in the total, carbohydrates themselves are not going to cause you to gain weight. They don't cause insulin resistance. They don't cause you to put on more fat than any other source of extra calories. Okay. Eating sugar causes diabetes. We all know that's not true. Diabetes is caused by a lack of insulin. It's not really any insulin resistance or fact that eating too much sugar. We do know that a lot of sugar in foods leads to concentrated sources of calories that are typically known as what we call empty calories. They're not particularly nutritious. They can give you a lot of calories, and so when you have a lot of calories, you tend to put on weight. We know when you put on weight, it's not so good for blood sugar control, as well as the fact that it makes it difficult for those that are maybe pre-diabetics trying to avoid developing diabetes when you have too many excess calories. Okay, so this started like several years ago, but diabetics should consume complex carbohydrates. Those are things that are not simple sugars, things that are like cereals and pastas and things, because they're digested more slowly, and they should also avoid sugar and other forms of concentrated sweets. And actually what the newer research says is that your blood sugar after you eat and your glucose levels are pretty much the same, whether or not it's coming from sugars or whether it's coming from a starch. That a carbohydrate is a carbohydrate is a carbohydrate. And it's really what's most important is the amount of carbohydrate you eat and having a consistent level of that. In addition to that, some of the information that rolled out in the early 1995, early 1900 there, 1995, I guess, sugars and concentrated sweets became allowed on a healthy eating plan for persons with diabetes, with people with diabetes. The sweets could replace other forms of sugar and other forms of carbohydrate in the meal plan. There's a little caveat to that. So the sugar or a starch could be in the diet. At that time, the recommendation said up to about a teaspoon. Diabetics could have up to about a teaspoon of sugar in their diet a day. But what they had to do is they had to count it. So all the carbohydrate had to be counted, whether it was from a sugar source or whether it was from a carbohydrate source. As long as you were counting for it and your blood sugar was in control, that you didn't need to avoid sugar totally. And they also said, the American Diabetes Association also said, most carbohydrates should come from nutritious foods, of course. We know that the sugar was the empty calories, even though they had kind of given permission to have a little bit of it. They weren't giving full permission, but they said it should come from things like fruits and vegetables and grains, and low fat and fat-free dairy foods would be the primary source of those carbohydrates at that time. And then in addition to that, around 2008, which is now seems like it was just yesterday, but the American Diabetes Association kind of took a position on all this new research that it had been working on and said basically it was going to implement what they call a consistent carbohydrate diet. Many of you may know people who were on diabetic diets, and they might call them an 1800 ADA diet, 1800 diabetic diet, 1200 diabetic diet. They were calorie levels that usually were tightly controlled within about 100 calories. Typically diabetics were put on exchanges, and they put foods in and out of their diet based on that calorie level. Pretty much the American Diabetes Association said that wasn't important anymore. So they said they're going to get rid of the ADA or that diabetic diet, and that they would get rid of the no concentrated sweets diet, and that they would call it a consistent carbohydrate. If you remember when I talked about the sugars and carbohydrates, I said wasn't so much whether it was the sugar or the carbohydrate, but it was the amount, and was it consistent in the diet. And that's pretty much the stand that the American Diabetes Association took. They also said that they would tell you kind of what the recipe of a healthy diet looked like. How much of what should you have? About 50% of that diet should be carbohydrates. So when you look at that, and we talk about carbohydrates are bad for diabetics, you can see that the major proportion of what your diet's made up is the carbohydrates. 20% your protein and 30% from fat. And that occasional sweets counted in the total carbohydrates. That's what they had originally already said, that if you're going to have sweets, that you need to just account for it, you need to adjust your medication for it. And again, they emphasize that you need to increase the amount of fresh vegetables, fruits, and whole grains in the diet. So basically, what did I just tell you? I told you a carb is a carb is a carb is a carb. So as long as you know what your carbs are, you're consistent with them, and you're counting them, that's what's important. So whether you put a crouton on your sundae or you're counting your cherry or whatever you're doing, as long as you're accounting for it, that's most important. So besides all that kind of basic information, what are some fact and fallacy things that have been out there that diabetics? Cinnamon has been really popular. Several studies on it. It's still not quite enough studies for them to make a statement in terms of how important they think it is as part of the diet, but definitely cinnamon does not lower A1C levels, so that would be false. But what it has been shown to lower is blood sugar levels, and it's also been shown to lower the lipid values, so your cholesterol, triglyceride, and those types of fats. So it has some proven benefits. In the studies they did, they used 1 gram, 3 gram, and 6 grams of cinnamon. They saw the effects with as little as 1 gram of cinnamon. And you say, well, what's 1 gram of cinnamon? It's basically about 1/2 teaspoon of cinnamon. Okay, so basically if that's what you're talking about, if you're considering using cinnamon in your diet, I would consider saying 1/2 teaspoon is pretty easy to get in the basic fare of your diet. You can sprinkle a little bit on some oatmeal. Oatmeal is a good choice, soluble fiber, great cereal in the morning. So you could sprinkle a little cinnamon on there. You could put a little cinnamon on some toast. You could get it in cereals already. So you really don't have to go out of your way to really get extra cinnamon, in any kind of caplets or anything like that. And most of the cinnamon that was used in these studies was actually not very much. Like I said, 1/2 teaspoon of cinnamon. So it's not going to lower A1C values, but they did see, again, the blood sugar control. I would not use this in place of any good meal planning. You should have your good meal planning, and this maybe would be an adjunct or something you would add or consider as part of your diet. It does have a sustained benefit. They did see that the people that were in the study, that this effect on the blood sugar was actually sustained over time, that it had a lasting effect when cinnamon was consistently in the diet. So again, not very much, don't need a lot, and I would get it from food sources if you would like to use cinnamon in your diet. Only Thing I would caution there is if you're on any medications that alter your platelet function, you should check with your doctor if you're going to really include a lot of cinnamon in your diet. Also, pregnant and lactating women should avoid cinnamon because there's some issues potentially with that. Okay, so factor fallacy, coconut oil helps lower cholesterol. There's a lot of stuff. There's coconut water out, there's a lot of coconut around. Coconut oil actually is the highest saturated, it's a plant-based food. Typically we think of foods that are high in saturated fat with animal foods. We think of, meats and those things having a high level of saturated fat. This is the exception. It's one of the plant-based foods which is the highest out of all the oils in saturated fat. It's an interesting type of saturated fat, the type that's in there. They actually see, in terms of cholesterol, they kind of see a neutral effect on the cholesterol. It's really the bad cholesterol is not really going up, and the good cholesterol, the good cholesterol is not really going up, and the bad's not really going down. It's just kind of holding. So there's not a huge benefit to it. It is a source of saturated fat. So what I would say to it, if you're going to use it, because you like the flavor of it, the virgin type of this oil has a little bit of a sweet and nutty flavor. It goes good with kind of a sweet tropical, if you're making something kind of tropical, a curry or something type of a dish. But if you're going to use it, I would use it in moderation. I don't see a real health benefit to it. The only health benefit that I could think possibly is if you were vegan and you didn't have any meat products or animal products in your diet, and so you were not going to use butter and you're doing some kind of cooking. You might want to use this because the virgin coconut oil, because it would give you the flavors and you could prepare foods with it just a little bit like you would with the butter, and you wouldn't get like a trans fat like you would get in a hydrogenated type of fat. And why I say that is because if you take this oil, and they do this in processing, if you take the coconut oil and you put it through a processing where they make it partially hydrogenated, they turn it into what we call a trans fat. Those types of fats that we know are not good for your blood lipid profiles. So if you're vegan and you want to avoid meat products or any type of animal product, and butter's one of those things, a virgin coconut oil, just a moderate amount maybe is the answer for you. Other than that, I probably would avoid it. There's too many other good oils and things that are available. Factor fallacy, chia seeds are an excellent source of omega-3 fatty acids and fiber. One of the dietitians in our department just brought them in a couple weeks ago, and I think it was the first, I don't know where I've been, but it was the first time I saw them. I go, what are those? And it was like, this little, it looked, I don't know what they look like. They're little tiny kind of things. I didn't even know what they were, but that's true. They are an excellent source of omega-3 fatty acids, and just a couple of tablespoons of these chia seeds is 10 grams of fiber. So if you're looking for fiber, this is an excellent source. In addition to that, these chia seeds have some iron, magnesium, a little bit of calcium, and so in terms of chia seeds, I say it's a go. I think if you want to put a little chia seeds into your diet, if you want to sprinkle them in on top of a cereal, you want to put them, you can actually soak them and put them into food products because they kind of swell up, and then you could mix them into other things. You could put them into like a vegetable juice if you're juicing or something, and kind of grind them up that way too. So I think that there's some promise for them. They actually have been shown to maybe have a positive effect on the lipid profile. So I think if you're interested in chia seeds, I would maybe possibly consider that. Bitter melon lowers glucose by improving glucose tolerance. True or false? It's actually true. It does lower the blood sugars. And what does lower the blood, first of all, it looks like a cucumber. It is a vegetable. And it actually lowers it by the actual product itself. Extracting anything or making anything out of bitter melon hasn't quite been as successful, but actually eating the bitter melon itself has shown to lower blood sugars. So if you are eating this bitter melon, and there it's related to the honeydew and the Persian melon, it's a family in that family, but if you're eating actually this bitter melon, you want to watch your blood sugars with that. You want to see if you're on medications that control your blood sugars. You want to, if this becomes a part of your diet, you want to make sure that you're really monitoring your blood sugars if you're going to put the bitter melon into your diet. The interesting thing about it is, for whatever reason in the research, they don't recommend that you eat it for very long. So that's the one thing that I'm not sure, like if you're eating some of it, they don't recommend that you eat more of it for more than 3 months. I'm not sure where they came up with that, but they said it for long-term use they don't recommend it, but if short-term use you're using a little bit of it in your diet with blood sugar control, that it could be helpful. So I'm not sure. What we're really trying to do when we're working with diabetic diets or meal planning is we're really trying to get to something we can do over a period of time and do over and over and have something we're really comfortable with. But there is that caveat to the bitter melon there. So even though it does help decrease blood sugars. So true or false? Diabetics may benefit greatly from adopting a vegetarian or a vegan diet. This is a topic I love. I took a class last summer in vegetarianism, so this is like my favorite topic. A little clue here. We talked a lot. The American Diabetes Association, along the way in 1995 and 2008, when I was saying there's a couple bullet points I hit, and they kept saying increasing fruits, vegetables, grains, increasing fruits, vegetables, and grains. So in terms of a vegetarian or vegan diet, actually there's a lot of great promising research that says it is very beneficial for diabetics to be on a vegan or vegetarian diet, okay? Particularly there's strong research, meta-analysis that have been done that show that people who are pre-diabetics and or type 2 can get some really good control. And one of the things that they see with it is the closer you are down the food chain, the closer you're away from meat, which is a vegan diet, that's the most pure form, and then maybe you add some dairy and some lacto-ovo, eggs and dairy, then you maybe add a little bit of chicken and you keep moving up the food chain, that the closer you are to vegan, the bigger the benefit it is, okay? Obviously a vegan diet needs to be planned well. Both a vegetarian diet, I would suggest if you're going to go that route, that you make sure you're talking with your doctor, you're meeting with your registered dietitian, you're looking at the carbs, you're looking at your choices, and doing all of that. But the research does show that there's great benefit to that. They see decreased BMI, so that you have a very healthy body weight. They see a better blood sugar management, and they see long-term effects in terms of lower lipid panel. All your cholesterol and your good cholesterol and everything is much better on the vegetarian and the vegan type diet. So there is a lot of value for those. So the thing is too, when you think about most of the types of foods that are going to be on a vegetarian and vegan diet, they're going to be, the whole fruits and vegetables and the nice grains and things like that. That even, I don't know how many of you are familiar with the glycemic index. And I know there's a lot of, some information back and forth about that. But a lot of the foods that would be in this vegetarian diet, you're going to find on the lower end, the glycemic index, though we could talk a lot about glycemic index and its appropriateness. Obviously, it's not a diet you just do alone. It's something that you would also consult with a dietitian with your good meal plan. Maybe you're looking at the glycemic index as an adjunct to what you're already doing potentially. But a lot of the foods you'll find in the vegetarian diet technically kind of fit into that lower glycemic index, the legumes, things like that. So it does provide for a healthy diet. Okay, so basically your medical nutrition therapy is really based on individual medical needs, and I know that Vita said that. So while we have a whole discussion about different things that you possibly could do with your diet and that, you want to remember that you need to each individualize your diet based on your team, your diabetic team that works with you. And you'll have probably specific goals for you, for your weight, for your diet, and things that you need, certain things. And if you're interested in a vegetarian or a vegan diet, how do you do that in a healthy manner? And how do you control your blood sugars and how often you're checking and whatnot? So you need to make sure you do that. But there is really good basic advice. And I think what I want to say to you is last year there was so much information that came out on diet hoaxes and whatnot and things that were out on the market, because when you have a large pool of people, and I mentioned how many millions of people have diabetes, it becomes a place where people would like to market products. They'd like to make promises to you to help you manage your blood sugars and things with things that maybe are not really going to do that. So last year, mid-summer sometime, the FDA had so many complaints about things that were out on the market that were actually either harmful or not living up to what was marketed about those products, that the FDA did a major sweep through a lot of the supplements and dietary companies that were releasing products for diabetics, and basically kind of started working with them one-on-one for them to kind of clean things up or get things off the market. And those things that for sure you can tell that is probably a hoax are going to be things that say natural, lowers your blood sugar, naturally lowers your blood sugar. No need to take any diabetic medications, that this will replace them. Something that's going to take care of everything. It's going to cure your arthritis, it's going to cure your diabetes, it's going to take care of your back, it's going to grow your hair longer, all that stuff. Anything that makes a lot of promises is probably too good to be true. And those are the kind of products the FDA was actually searching out. And what they were really disappointed in when they found all these products that were out there on the market was that really what was being missed is some of this basic nutrition advice, because this basic advice here, as much as it's not maybe as exciting, maybe there's not a lot of hype behind it, and that there's strong evidence-based research behind this. And we said we want to know the facts, and we want to know what to do that's right for us. So this is the solid foundation. This is the stuff that proves day in and day out that you're going to be having a healthy lifestyle. The timing of your meals and snacks, don't go more than 4 hours without eating. I know we talked about just eating before bed doesn't make you fat, but you really do need to space your meals out. So make sure you're not going long periods of time without eating. That'll help control the blood sugars and control your hunger and everything else. Get a variety of healthy, high-fiber foods, and I think that's where also too the vegetarian and vegan diet got a lot of its power behind those studies. Is it's full of high-fiber foods. It's full of soluble fiber, which is good for your cholesterol. It's good, all kinds of antioxidants in those fruits and vegetables. So getting a variety of colors in your diet is really important. Reduce saturated fat, trans fat, cholesterol, and sodium. Okay, so that again, that was the fuel behind the whole vegetarian diet. The minute you take animal products out of your diet, you're going to reduce your saturated fat. You're not going to have trans fat, as much trans fat. It's usually, there's processed trans fat, and there's some that are inherent in the diet. Cholesterol intake's going to go down, and your sodium typically when you start going to fresh foods from basically right off out of the fields for your fruits and vegetables and everything, you're going to have a lower sodium diet. Limit refined carbohydrates and the added sugars. Of course, we said those are a lot of empty calories. Empty calories just usually make it difficult to keep your weight at a healthy weight. Watch your portion size and read the labels, and I know that they probably had classes, Vita, in here probably on label reading, or do a little bit maybe one-on-one when you meet with them. Maintain a healthy weight. We talked about that, how important it is. And if you need to, get your weight down to a healthy BMI. Keep a food journal. Food journals are really important because you can see how your blood sugars are responding to different types of foods and meal planning and what happens. Increase your energy expenditure. And I don't want to just say that. They said that you need to be specific. When you tell people you need to move more, you need to tell them how much to move. Otherwise, not quite sure what that means. So basic, with approval from your physician and everything's okay for you to do this, you should be active at least 30 minutes most days of the week. That's what being active means, and increasing energy expenditure. And really learn to make the lifestyle changes that you can keep for a very long period of time and not for a short period. And that's the thing with the things that are kind of the new fads and things that have a lot of hype behind them. They're typically not things that people can follow. People be on a grapefruit diet, and sure, they lose weight because they eat grapefruits and eat grapefruits, and then they get sick of eating grapefruits, so they're losing weight because they're not really eating anything else. And then eventually you have to quit eating grapefruits, and then you have to find something to eat. So you really want to practice skills and eat a diet that you can live with, every day, not for a short period of time. Okay, so the plate method, you have a lot of different, you'll do label reading, you can look at your carbohydrates and you can be counting those and whatnot, but on a quick visual, you should be able to look at your plate and know what it should be looking at. Half the plate should be vegetables and salad, typically the non-starchy types of vegetables. Then you got a little starch section at the top, your breads, your pastas, your rice and things, and then your meat and poultry, and those should be lean, so chicken and without the skin, and lean cuts of red meat if you have it, or tender cuts of pork and whatnot, all baked, broiled, roasted, anything that allows the fat to drip away. So on quick look, you could look at your plate and see if it looks right. I always think about this because just even raising kids, I'd look at their plate and think the whole plate's brown. So again, when you're looking at the plate, things go on there, but you should be seeing spots of color on there too, so and lots of colors. So that's another quick visual that you've put together your plate properly for eating. So in quick summary, nutrition is an important part of taking care of your diabetes. Stick with the facts, avoid the fad diets, foods or supplements. We talked today, if you wanted to put a little cinnamon in your diet, you only need about a half a teaspoon, so you could pick foods that have cinnamon and whatnot in them. Probably not a good idea to do the coconut oil, and that bitter melon kind of had limited use in the diet for short periods of time. And the chia seeds was okay, something you might, if you want to pick those up or try that, that would be great. And then create a lifestyle that you can really live with. It's something that you can do in and day out, that you're going to be successful with and you feel comfortable with. And always remember that don't ever give up the common sense stuff that has been evidence-based and has good information behind it in trade-off for some kind of fad or something. Anything that sounds too good to be true is probably too good to be true, and probably should be avoided. A lot of money is spent on things that really aren't helpful. And I also mentioned, and I don't know how many are familiar with that, but the supplement industry is not a well-regulated industry. And actually, when the FDA went in last year and looked at a lot of companies, that what they said were in some of the supplements weren't even in there. Some of the supplements had actually active ingredients that you find in diabetic medications as well that were not regulated. So you can get into a dangerous zone there if you're kind of getting supplements. So if you're thinking of any other type of supplement, please consult with your diabetic team on that as well.